Well, my design process is probably pretty different from most board game designers because I actually use the tricks I learned in balancing Age of Empires. So I use video game and computer game techniques in designing and balancing my board games, which makes sense. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I mean, how does that translate in terms of balancing mostly and fun story?
The way Ensemble Studios did our games, okay, was and it wasn't the same as every other company does. Most companies don't. But what we did is very early on in the process, we tried to get a version of the game up and running, no matter how crude. So it was already there, already playable. Really early on, like 6 months in, 4 months in, we had a version that was running. Okay, and then we would start playing it. And we'd play it, and then I would go back in my office and make changes or talk to the programmers. We'd play it again. I go back in my office, make changes, or tell if it's a change I can make in the database, I would do it. But usually the programmers had to do it, or an artist had to draw a new unit and put it in, And then we'd keep doing that. So we're playing this game every day, often multiple times a day, making multiple changes every time there's a test. And the result is it probably took longer to do the game because we didn't start with a vision in mind necessarily and go up to the vision is correct, then do the game. We have an almost finished game, and then we start testing it. We because we're testing it. I remember me and Greg Street were once sitting in a seminar. They were talking about a RTS game, which I won't, which was a good RTS game that still sells, but I won't mention which one.
StarCraft, Red Alert.
I'm not going to say,
okay,
but it was one of those.
Okay.
Okay. And the guy up there was saying, you have to play test your game a lot. And me and Greg are like, yeah, you have to play test it a lot. He said, you have to play it so much. And we said, yeah, you have to play it more than you ever thought you could play test it. And we said, yeah. And then he said, we play tested our latest game for 3 whole months. And Greg and I burst into laughter because at that point, we've been play testing Age 3 for 18 months.
Jeez. Wow.
And we weren't done yet. So 3 months was like ludicrous.
Right.
Us,
If you're not interested in this part, feel free to skip a minute ahead. This is very interesting. I found a conversation I did with the creator of Red Alert 1 and Command & Conquer, and he actually talks about why their product was so rushed later on. I'm 99.9% positive Sandy was talking about Red Alert, but I found this interesting little excerpt from that conversation that gives a little more context as to why their games were rushed.
And, to my embarrassment, I will say, I think that the flaws that Red Alert had were flaws, unfortunately, that Westwood knew about and decided to ship with anyway. And that was, for me, the end of the road for me. And what I mean by that is, when I signed up to Westwood, they were like Blizzard. They were, it's done when it's done. We do good product. We ship the finished game, not the half-done game, right? And what happened between the original Command & Conquer and Red Alert is that the power shifted. Right, Westwood was the purchased by Virgin underdog that had to prove themselves up till Command & Conquer. The moment Command & Conquer shipped and did so well, the president of Westwood, basically started running Virgin. Right. But when that happened, all of that, we do good product, we ship it when it's done, kind of just went away, and all of a sudden it became about quarterly revenue and all of this stuff. And when I saw a product that I knew wasn't finished be forced to market outside of my control, I said, yeah, that's it for me.
Now one of the things this got us at Ensemble Studios is that we knew the game was fun early on because we were making sure it was. In fact, Age of Empires 3 took like a year before it was fun to play, and it was really worrying us that we couldn't make it fun. I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't fun like Age 2 and Age 1. We finally got to the point where it was fun, and then we can go into other iterations, right? But the thing is, because we've been playing the game for a year, we knew it was fun, and we could prove it was fun because people were playing it in their off hours. People would come into our office with excited suggestions. We just knew it was fun. When I was working at Microprose Software, we could tell when a game was fun and not, because if it wasn't fun, the playtesters were done when they're done for the day, or maybe it could be fun still, but they were like sick of it, right?
Right. There's levels to that, right? There's levels to that fun.
When they were testing Civilization, the first Civilization, those guys were playing it on their lunch hour, and they'd stay late, and they just went crazy about it. So we knew Civilization was onto something. So Ensemble Studios always knew our game was going to be fun before it was released. And as a result, all of our games were fun. We never had a clinker.
Okay, do you have that same feeling with board games? Do you have that sense when you know a board game is going to be a hit?
Yes.
Really?
Because what I do is just like Ensemble Studios, I start testing the game really, really early, and keep going through iterations so I can see the players playing and having fun. And even when it's not fully balanced, doesn't have all the features in, they're having fun. So I know I've got that core part of the game. And if I add a feature that makes it not fun, it goes. I can give you an example. So in a recent game of mine coming up is actually the next game we're going to get out in physical form. It's called Hyperspace, and it's a. Do you know what a 4X game is?
Yeah. It's like a really complicated, in-depth game.
Well, sort of. I mean, it's exploration, exploitation. I forget what the third X is, but the last is extermination.
Yeah.
Expansion and extermination. So you're trying to build this. Civilization is kind of one, right? Okay. So Hyperspace is one, and but it's not a. But usually they're the games that take like 10 hours to play. Well, Hyperspace you play in 2 hours, but it has all the features. So in Hyperspace,
it's a board game. Sorry, it's a board game.
It's totally a board game.
Okay.
It's totally a board game. 4X games can be board games or
okay. I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I'm working. So early on, I had this idea to have a market in space. Okay, and the way it was going to work is I thought it was pretty clever. Is that when you bought a good, you'd pay credits to buy metal or radioactive or something, then the price of that good would go up.
Just like in Age of Empires, like a market, yeah.
Yeah, and if you sold it, the price would go down. Okay, so and then I had civilizations that messed with the market and did different things. They had abilities that bypassed them, right?
But this is you doing it manually on a board game level, so there's no like computer programming.
There was a graph.
Okay,
markers that go down.
I got you.
It was pretty simple to do, right? It wasn't as detailed as a computer game because it's a board game, but you can see what was happening and say, well, I'm going to sell 10 metals, and then you go, okay, metal price now went from 2 to 3, and then you say, okay, now I'm going to buy. If you sold them, the price would go down. If you bought them, right? So we had the system, and it was in there, and it was working, and it worked just the way I wanted it to. And one day the players came into play, and it was gone. And they said, "What happened to the market?" And I said, "I really loved the market, and I took it out because I want this game to be about exploring planets and being aliens and blowing up spaceships, and not economic markets." And there was too much time spent looking at the market, and people would forget to do the market thing all the time. They'd buy something and forget to adjust the track. So on a computer game, you never forget.
There's that expression, like you got to kill what you love in a sense if it's damaging to the overall product, right? And that's can be very difficult.
Exactly. And so I still have that idea in the back of my head that there may be a game coming up where the market will work and be fun. So I still have that concept. And that's one of the ways I kill my kids is that I'll say, my game kids, is I'll say, okay, this will be used somewhere, and I'll wait, and then sometime later it'll get used, So but I had to take that out, and it made the game more fun. And there's other things I took out too, here and there that I added. But even when they weren't fun, the way they modified the game often ended up with a stronger game in the future. So